Breaking news: in a move that has sent shockwaves across North America, Canada has just imposed severe and sweeping restrictions on land access to Alaska for both American citizens and commercial traffic. This is not just a minor policy change, it's a dramatic shift that will have immediate and far-reaching consequences for thousands of people and businesses on both sides of the border. The announcement has left officials in Washington and Juneau reeling, as Alaska now finds itself suddenly and unexpectedly isolated from the rest of the United States by land. The sense of urgency and disbelief is palpable in both capitals, with leaders scrambling to respond. The vital arteries that connect the lower 48 states to Alaska, routes that wind through the vast Canadian wilderness, are now squeezed shut, effectively cutting off the only overland lifeline to America's northernmost state. For decades, these highways have been a symbol of cooperation and connection. Now they stand silent and blocked. Ottawa's sudden announcement, citing unresolved trade and environmental disputes, caught U.S. officials completely off guard. The Canadian government insists the move is necessary to protect national interests, but the timing and severity have left many questioning what's really at stake. Effective immediately, all non-essential U.S. travel through Canada to Alaska is suspended. Families with plans to visit loved ones, tourists, and workers are being turned away at the border, their journeys abruptly halted. Commercial trucking, the backbone of Alaska's supply chain, now faces rigorous new inspections and heavy tariffs. Long lines of trucks stretch for miles with drivers waiting anxiously as traffic grinds to a near halt. Essential goods are at risk of being delayed or stopped altogether. Former President Trump wasted no time calling the Canadian action a disgusting betrayal. He demanded immediate retaliation and a full review of defense agreements with Canada, escalating tensions and putting additional pressure on current leaders. His fiery words have ignited a political firestorm in Washington, with lawmakers from both parties demanding swift action. The current administration is now under intense scrutiny, facing calls for diplomatic and economic responses. For nearly 730,000 Alaskans, this is more than just a political dispute, it's a direct threat to daily life. Everything from groceries and fuel to medical supplies and mail depends on those roads. The uncertainty is causing anxiety and concern in communities across the state. Businesses are bracing for closures and potential job losses, while families worry about being cut off from essential services and support. The economic ripple effects could be devastating, especially for small towns and remote villages. The world is watching closely as two longtime allies face a crisis that could redefine North American relations for years to come. Diplomatic channels are buzzing and the stakes could not be higher. Tonight we break down what this unprecedented closure means for you, for the economy, and for the future of the continent. The ripple effects could touch every sector from trade and travel to security and diplomacy. We have reporters and experts standing by to provide the latest updates and in-depth analysis. This story is developing rapidly. Stay with us for continuing coverage as events unfold. To grasp today's crisis, we must look back. The U.S. bought Alaska from Russia in 1867, sparking skepticism and border disputes with what would become Canada. The Klondike gold rush saw tens of thousands of Americans crossing Canadian territory, straining relations and leading to the Alaska boundary dispute. The 1903 settlement favored the U.S., leaving a scar on Canadian pride. Despite early tensions, the 20th century brought close alliance, fighting together in two world wars and building the world's longest undefended border. But history shows Canadian sensitivity to U.S. unilateralism and a precedent for border disputes. Today's actions suggest that trust may have finally broken down. The Alaska Highway, built during the urgency of Witu, was a monumental feat of engineering and determination. Soldiers and workers braved harsh conditions, carving a path through some of the most remote wilderness on the continent. Over the decades, it became Alaska's vital link to the lower 48 states, connecting communities and economies across thousands of miles. Carved through Canada in under a year, the highway symbolized unprecedented U.S. Canada cooperation. It fueled Alaska's growth, opening up new opportunities for trade, travel, and cultural exchange. Now, that lifeline is under threat, turning into a choke point for the entire state. More than 70% of Alaska's goods, everything from food to fuel, arrive via this single highway. Alternatives by sea or air are costly, limited, and often unreliable, especially in harsh weather. The new restrictions mean immediate shortages, felt in grocery stores, gas stations, and construction sites. Everyday life is disrupted, and uncertainty grows. Thousands of U.S. military families depend on this route for relocation, deployment, and reunification with loved ones. Civilians too rely on the highway for vacations, moving, and simply staying connected to the rest of the continent. Canada's decision effectively traps Alaskans, severing not just a road, but a deep cultural and emotional tie that has existed for generations. Flights remain, but the freedom and spontaneity of the open road is gone, replaced by uncertainty and isolation. The move is a calculated blow to Alaska's economy and spirit, threatening livelihoods and dreams. For many, the drive outside is a rite of passage, a symbol of adventure and independence. Now it's out of reach for countless Alaskans. The impact is deeply personal, touching families, friendships, and the very identity of Alaska itself. The highway, once a proud symbol of unity and cooperation, is now a flashpoint of tension and frustration. The consequences are immediate, far-reaching, and profoundly felt by every Alaskan. This crisis is the result of years of tension, fueled by clashing leaders and unresolved disputes. Trudeau and Trump have long sparred over trade, tariffs, and climate policy. Today's restrictions echo those battles. Canada is leveraging geography to force U.S. concessions. Trump's response, a personal attack on Trudeau, calls for massive retaliation and pressure on the White House. The issue is now a flashpoint in the U.S. election campaign. The administration faces a dilemma: respond forcefully and risk escalation, or appear weak and face political fallout. A trade war with Canada could devastate both economies. The White House is walking a diplomatic tightrope. Every move is under scrutiny. The stakes are high and the margin for error is razor thin. The world is watching. The economic fallout is immediate and severe. Alaska's economy, reliant on goods trucked through Canada, faces panic buying and looming shortages. Prices for essentials are spiking, businesses are bracing for closures, truck convoys are stalled at the border, with perishable goods and livelihoods at risk. Canada's new tariffs and inspections make the route prohibitively expensive. There are few viable alternatives for many goods. The ripple effects threaten the entire U.S.-Canada trade relationship. Over $2 billion in goods cross daily. Trump's proposed retaliatory tariffs would hit industries on both sides, raising prices for consumers. Investor confidence is shaken. Companies are pausing investments and rethinking supply chains. The integrated North American economy faces its greatest stress test. The longer the standoff, the deeper the damage. This is a game of economic chicken. Both sides stand to lose. The clock is ticking. The world is watching as two allies clash. For NATO and G7 partners, this fracture weakens the Western alliance at a time of rising global tensions. Adversaries like China and Russia see opportunity, using the crisis as propaganda and seeking to exploit divisions. Global trade and supply chains are at risk. Disruption here means volatility worldwide. Shipping companies and logistics firms face costly adjustments. The North American market is a global economic engine. A trade war would send shockwaves far beyond the continent. Arctic sovereignty is also at stake. As climate change opens new routes, U.S. Canada cooperation is vital for security. This dispute weakens their collective position and opens doors for rivals. The security of the Arctic depends on trust. Now that trust is in jeopardy. The consequences extend far beyond the Alaska Highway. The stakes are global. To truly understand the depth of this crisis, we turn to the voices of those living it every day, the people whose lives are being shaped by forces far beyond their control. In Anchorage, Sarah Jenkins, a mother and business owner, shares her frustration. We're cut off from our own country, shelves are empty. This isn't politics, it's survival. For families like hers, every trip to the store is a reminder of how quickly normal life can unravel. In Whitehorse, Yukon, motel owner Mark laments, "My bookings are gone, the phones are silent, and the rooms are empty." We're paying the price for Ottawa's fight. For small businesses, every lost customer is a blow that's hard to recover from. Yet some Canadians stand firmly behind the government's tough stance, seeing it as finally standing up to U.S. pressure after years of compromise. "We've rolled over too long," says a Calgary resident, echoing a sentiment that's gaining traction across the country. If this gets us respect, so be it. For many, national pride is at stake, even as the costs mount. Back in Alaska, a long-haul trucker stuck at the border says, "My produce will rot. Every hour I wait, my losses grow." This isn't about people, it's politicians in suits. The disconnect between decision-makers and those affected is painfully clear. The economic and emotional toll is real on both sides. Families worry about their next paycheck, and communities fear for their future. Border communities are deeply intertwined. Now, they're suffering together, their daily routines upended by decisions made far away. The crisis exposes how political decisions ripple through everyday lives. Frustration is boiling over and patience is wearing thin. People want solutions, not rhetoric. They're demanding real action from leaders on both sides of the border. The human cost is mounting, with stress and uncertainty touching every household and business. These are the stories behind the headlines, the personal struggles and hopes that rarely make the front page. The need for resolution is urgent. Every day without answers deepens the crisis and the anxiety. Lives and livelihoods hang in the balance, waiting for a breakthrough that can bring relief to both sides of the border. Experts weigh in on the crisis. Dr. Evelyn Reed calls Canada's move high-risk desperation, using geography to force U.S. concessions. If Washington calls the bluff, Canada's economy could suffer. Political analyst Gloria Borger says, "This is a gift to Trump's campaign. He looks tough, the White House looks weak." Every day the crisis drags on, Trump dominates the news cycle. Business correspondent Christine Romans warns, supply chains are fragile. Disruption now means higher costs and long-term uncertainty. The USMCA was meant to prevent this kind of standoff. Now, its future is in doubt. Retired General Mark Hertling stresses the military stakes. NORAD depends on trust. Political conflict erodes that trust and weakens Arctic security. Using border access as a bargaining chip has dangerous consequences. The crisis threatens not just trade but national security. The need for swift resolution is clear. The risks are escalating. The world is watching for leadership. The fire must be put out, fast. North America stands at a crossroads. Canada's actions have triggered a crisis threatening decades of peace and prosperity. The path forward: escalation and trade war, or de-escalation and diplomacy. High-level talks are needed. Both sides must step back and address real grievances. The stakes, not just groceries and Anchorage, but the future of the U.S.-Canada partnership. Choices made now will echo for generations. We'll keep following this story. Lives and stability hang in the balance. Good night.